You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible.
The neo-Nazi podcaster Scott Rhodes of Idaho, who's being fined $12.9 million for harassing Andrew Gillum supporters with racist robocalls during his 2018 Florida gubernatorial campaign. Now, in November of 2018, he tried to interfere in another election by making 583 robocalls denouncing Georgia gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams. The racist and anti-Semitic, those things always seem to go hand in hand, calls falsely claimed to be from, get this, Oprah Winfrey. Here's another example of the kind of hatred he exposed people to.
The body of 20-year-old Molly Tibbetts was found in a cornfield after she was stabbed to death by an invader from Mexico, a biological hybrid of white and his savage Aztec ancestors who also killed with knives during their mass human sacrifices on top of pyramids they didn't build. Some relatives of Molly Tibbetts are implying that despite having been murdered by a non-white savage intruder, she would still support the invasion of America by a brown horde, currently at a staggering 58 million. But you know in your heart they are wrong. If after her life has now been brutally stolen from her, she could be brought back to life for just one moment and asked, what do you think now? Molly Tibbetts would say,
kill them all.
Well, we don't have to kill them all, but we do have to deport them all. The Aztec hybrids, known as mestizos, are low IQ, bottom-feeding savages, and is why the countries they infest are crime-ridden failures. That's now America's fate, too, unless we refound America as whites only and get rid of them now. Every last one.
This message paid for by theroadtopower.com.
I imagine we all know what time that is. And it's amazing that that person would say that others are low IQ as he says we need to refound America. But I'm not here to opine. We have some analysts that you've already heard from and you'll hear more from. Joining me, Joseph Williams, again, senior editor of U.S. News and World Report. Amisha Cross, you know her as a host extraordinaire, but she's also a political analyst and Democratic strategist. And our brother on Skype is Rob Richardson, host of the Disruption Now podcast. Rob, hello to you. I just got in studio, so I wanted to make sure I spoke to you. Amisha, I want to start with you because you were doing such a great job of hearing everyone else's opinions, but I want your opinion on this. How do so many Americans, particularly white Americans, particularly white racist Americans, think that this is still an okay way to exist with other human beings here in 2020?
I think because even though, we've had the civil rights movement, we've tried to, or at least some people thought we were in a post-racial society, we never actually have been, and it's hard to believe, and I personally don't believe that we'll get there. What we do have is a president that continues to stoke the flames of hate. And when you do that, you have these people that were usually in their own little echo chambers with friends and people who think like them, who are afraid to go out and make these statements publicly. Right now, you have an emboldened populace that, as racist, xenophobic as they happen to be, they feel free to shed all of this information out here for everybody to share far and wide. Listening to that, it was not only extremely disruptive, crazy in many ways, but also just the vitriol that was within it. I would be afraid to even be in the same room with somebody who thought and held those types of ideals, because it is not a large leap to go from that type of thinking to extreme violent activity.
Rob, I want to go to you because you're a podcaster, even using the name Disruption Now, and Amisha alluded to disrupting just now. But is the growth in technology, the growth in digital communication, is that aiding in bringing these types of folks who may have been in the margins or the shadows out to a more public sphere?
Oh, there's no question about that. And there's a lot of benefits to the digital age, obviously, but it certainly amplifies the worst pre-existing conditions of humans, the grandiosity, racism, the hate. You have a medium where you have really no filters, so you can just say or speak to whoever you want to. Not only that, of course, you can micro-target your communities and you can really get your worldview, no matter how warped, reinforced day in and day out. So you got this idiot, you got this guy who's out there doing this every day, and he did this, and he's stupid. Like, he's not the person I'm worried about. He's stupid. He's clear. He's overt. I mean, I'm worried about him. I wouldn't be in a room next to him. You know, I might have to punch him or something. I shouldn't punch him. We shouldn't say that. I would be whatever. I would be on guard. But let me just say this. He's the person you shouldn't worry about, because I don't hear much of a difference between his language and the president of the United States. As Amisha referenced, he's emboldening people like that. But my worry is not about those people. It's about the cognitive dissonance to all the other people who are saying this is acceptable. Because how many votes did Donald Trump get and say essentially that same type of language? That makes me nervous in terms of having a country that is fully and not only not rejecting this, they're fully embracing it. And you know, we know Donald Trump has not hidden from this, hasn't gone anywhere. So that's what we have to worry about. And final point on this, when you look at the digital strategy and what's really going on, there's going to be a sophisticated way to do this. We know if you read the Mueller report, it was a boring 400-page report. I read it. And there's only one line I want you to focus on. I want you to focus on what Russia did in targeting racial resentment and targeting black people. Here's what they did very, very simply. One, they paid black people to take martial arts. Think about this for a minute. And then they would only pay them when they would post those pictures of martial artists. And then they would send those pictures to insecure white people to say, these black people are coming after you. That's one. The other side of that is they dissuaded black voters by going after Hillary Clinton. And then Democrats and everybody are surprised because they know they didn't really do any digital strategy, and they spent all their money on TV while Trump and the Republicans micro-targeted their communities. So yes, it's a really big concern. I don't think people have really paid enough attention to that. And in a way, we're just reinforcing our own realities, and people are believing things no matter how crazy, no matter how outlandish.
But this isn't new. The whole trope of savage, racist, savage, rapist brutality is something that has been used for black and brown people for generations in this country. I think that obviously, you know, this president has stoked the flames of hate, but we can't act like just in this last election, these people suddenly emerged. This is something that we've seen redone over and over again in a different way. Now we have digital, you know, a digital expansion of access to where it's going through hundreds of thousands of people at once. But this is something that has been utilized across this country for a very long time.
It sounds like, to your point, it's a new medium with old tools. Joseph, in the last segment, Rob pointed to something where he said Democrats think large, federal elections, who's Congress, who's running for president. But a lot of the winning is done in the smaller elections, in both down ballot elections, judge elections, and even in our state houses. But here we've seen, and we know from what happened in Georgia, when the then Secretary of State, who's now the governor there, kicked off nearly 70,000 eligible voters and overwhelmingly likely Democrat. We know about the infiltrations in Florida, where so many eligible voters who are likely Democrats weren't able to vote. We see Democrats are targeting state houses. But here and again, we're seeing that the Republican adversaries are playing in ways not just are politics or dirty business, but are beyond the pale. Is there any hope if Democrats or anyone else who wants to oppose Democrats are unwilling to play at that level?
Well, that's a really interesting question, and I'm not sure we have an answer for that just yet. I mean, number one, it's asymmetric warfare, and conventional armies always do poorly against guerrilla fighters, and these guys aren't afraid to break the rules. This tape sounded really amateurish, but who knows how effective it might have been. Who knows how many votes it might have siphoned off from legit people who wanted to vote for Stacey Abrams or from Andrew Gillum. And we know that in Abrams' race, the margin of victory was very, very narrow. And that's with a guy who is running the election, also running for the office. I mean, it's just insane. And what's legal now and what's acceptable now is just mind-blowing. The second thing that comes to mind is they caught him. The FEC, it might have been the FEC or whatever commercial entity, federal entity that monitored these sorts of things, caught him, levied a hefty fine. And yet the president of the United States, who did far worse, who openly solicited government interference from a foreign country, is exonerated by the party. That's because this guy is kind of he's a bottom feeder, and it's easy to squash those people.
We have a president who literally said the exact same thing when it came to calling Mexican immigrants rapists. It came out of his mouth.
In his opening statement, when he announced that he was running.
When he was announcing that he was running on the campaign trail in the State of the Union, at any given point when he was given a public position to make the comments, he would make them, and he's been making them for years now.
Right, I would say as another point to actually bring up what you just said, my issue is that, Democrats, yes, they went after the state house in that, but like this was really predictable. And so, like, thinking about how Stacey Abrams is right now, she's actually funding this. She has a long-term plan. That's what Democrats need to be doing. Look, Republicans are going to cheat. We don't have to cheat to win, but we do have to fight. And I think there's a level of folks that are uncomfortable with actually engaging in conflict. I think that's the issue. You don't have to break the rules, but you do have to be willing to fight.
I think that uncomfortability comes from the fact that there are Democrats who know that within our very own party, there are people that believe the exact same thing. And it's very hard to be that person who is, I'm this fighter and I'm going to drive this through, when you know that some of the same people who smile in your face, who fundraise in your community, who people vote for every day and stand by, hold these exact same views.
Well, but
and that's why Democrats continue to lose elections. But
Joseph, go ahead and get in.
Here's the problem, though. I mean, one of the things that I keep thinking about is judges, right? If we talk about fighting, if we talk about trying to push back against some of these things through legal means and through conventional means, this is what this administration has been all about. This is why McConnell has stuck by him. This is why so many Republicans who were never Trumpers all of a sudden have flipped, is because they are not just targeting local elections, which they did, that's fine. They're targeting federal judgeships, lifetime judgeships, judgeships that determine election boundaries, judges that determine precincts, judges that determine who wins and who doesn't.
The same court packing you said in the last segment about FDR.
That's exactly right. Yep. It's kind of a through line here because, yes, this guy got caught and he got away with a lot of stuff, and he got away with some stuff that was beyond the pale that is now okay. But the problem is, if you are the Democratic Party and you don't want to go down that road, and yes, to your point, there are very many people who say, yes, I guess I agree with that, but I'm not going to say that openly because that's poor taste, right? Well, then what are the means of fighting back? What is the means of fighting back if they've got the courts, if the legislatures are changing the rules, and if the federal government is not doing anything through the Justice Department?
Rob, let me ask you this, and it's something you alluded to a bit in the Mueller report, and so I just want to push the conversation forward.
Sure.
One of the things that many on the black left were skeptical about the Russian report was the Russians didn't have to go in and change vote totals. They merely had to play on the fears and racial resentments that already existed. What does it mean that white Americans still today, to Amisha's point, be it Democrat or Republican, I'm not making this as a partisan question.
Sure.
This is an American question. What does it mean that white Americans just still don't like black people?
So let me I'm going to answer that question. I want to go back to what was talked about with judges, because I'm going to break the 11th commandment here. And I have great respect for Barack Obama. I voted for him, worked for him, raised tons of money for him. But I want to take everybody back in time, because I think it was Jason who said this. Like, yes, they have a strategy because, as I said before, Republicans play chess, Democrats play checkers. We'll go back in time and talk about Barack Obama and how he had a Supreme Court pick that didn't even get a vote. Now, replace him with George W. Bush, any Republican, a Democratic Senate, a Democratic House. Had they done that, what do you think they would have done? They would have raised all holy hell. There would have been all types of strategy, all types of fight. And we went out without a whimper. Like, I don't remember much strategy or pushback at all. And that was a big deal. That one vote has literally changed the course of probably the next 20 or 30 years of legal laws and rights that we're going to have in this country. It was a huge deal.
But what does that pushback look like, though? That's a good question. What does that pushback look like?
I'm going to tell you what pushback looks like. First of all, speaking up, thinking about a strategy that you would have, like, instead of getting a Maryland Garland, whatever his name is,
Garland, yeah.
Maryland Garland, yes, right. Somebody who's you think is going to be the safest pick and pacify people that you cannot pacify, that people that have been denying you from the beginning. Why don't you go ahead and get a black woman that might actually fire people up to be the first African-American woman, and then have a strategy for engaging your base, getting people really fired up and making this mainstream, instead of not doing anything, maybe even trying to push the boundaries, maybe even try to appoint them anyway. Don't not do anything. That's not a good strategy to me, to just say, well, hopefully we're going to win the next election. Republicans would never do that. I mean, the point is actually have a strategy to engage and fight. And I'm just getting tired of just saying, okay, well, we can't do anything, and then let's just hope that Americans see that we're fair. No, they want to see fighters. People respect folks that have conviction.
That's a great point. And to Rob's point, I think a little bit about when the North Carolina GOP headquarters burned. And there were so many Democrats who contributed so much money to help rebuild that, because folks were offering the rhetoric of country above party and we all want American. And the very first initiative that the North Carolina GOP did then, right after, was voter suppression, specifically targeting black and overwhelmingly Democratic communities. But Amisha, I did ask Rob a question, and Rob acknowledged it, but he had a point he wanted to make about the judge, and that was fair. But I'm not asking you to speak for or defend white people. But I am curious why in 2020, merely suggesting that there may be some Mexican sisters and brothers who may be your neighbor, merely suggesting that black Americans might arm themselves or learn kung fu or may learn self-defense tactics, merely suggesting the black presence exists and will be in someone's space is enough to drive serious wedges between Americans. What does that say about Americans and white Americans specifically?
It says about white Americans what it always has. This nation was founded upon a hierarchical system, and that hierarchical system kept black and brown people at the bottom. It kept black people as subhuman entirely. I don't think that we have grown too far past that. And when white America, by and large, starts to feel threatened, what we're seeing is the expansion of the brown race across this country. When they start to feel threatened, when they feel as though they actually have to compete for things, when they feel as though at this point that they may be outnumbered, that, you know, brown people are going to start voting in larger number, they're going to start participating in larger number. That threatens the very hierarchy and the esteem that they have for so long reinforced across this country. And I think that they will do almost anything to make sure that they don't move their place.
Joseph, I'm going to give you the last word on this. You asked a good question, and we're still kind of trying to search for an answer. We see and understand Republicans are playing outside the lines by so much, but Democrats, to Rob's point, do at least have to fight. But what does fighting look like?
Fighting looks like what's been going on right now, but you can't really fight effectively unless you win the elections. I mean, fighting back looks like
forgive me, I do want to hear from you.
Sure.
But if the thing that the Republicans are doing is contaminating those same elections that you're saying we must win, how does one engage?
It engages. There are pushes to change the electoral college. There's pushes to change representation. There's pushes to like lock in gerrymandering for a certain period. There's pushing to make sure that every person is counted so that the census is accurate. It means going to court when you know you can win. It means having a public strategy when you know you can't win to turn public opinion. It means being loud, sometimes being wrong, but not caring about being loud and wrong, as long as you're trying to make an objective point and get your side in an advantage.
I think Rob made the point about the D.C. statehood that maybe it won't come to fruition in 2020, but you lay the groundwork so it'll become a thing later on. In 2010, Medicare for all and single-payer solution advocates were pushing and pushing, and it sounded so far-fetched. Here we are in 2020, and that thing polls really strong. Rob, hold on 1 second.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
Are you looking to enhance your leadership or that of your team in 2020? Join our newest online course and mastermind group, How Successful People Think. She will be your guide as you learn timeless leadership principles to apply to daily living. Now, the offer expires February 28th of this year, 2020. So be sure to register for and start on the online course today. That's going to be at www.livetolead.com/Leesburg. www.livetolead.com/Leesburg. It's right here.
Now back to your Roland Martin Unfiltered video. You want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it.